we came online, there was just this raging back and forth about contracts and publishers and sync agents and all this. And anyway, it was fine, but it gives us a good sort of prep for this, because people are excited to talk about how to set themselves up, which is great.
Yeah,
and now
that's
we're
excellent.
now we're online. Okay. So let's get live. And I think that we are actually online now. Okay, this is great. Hi, everybody. How are you? It's good to see you. This is so great to have the opportunity to do this with you. All right. So, I wanted to bring on my friend here, who is my partner in our music and metadata class, but also happens to be my partner in just doing a lot of different things in this group and with our community over the last year and a half. Michele Weiss-Maslin. Michele, how are you today?
I am fantastic, Mark. The sun has come out after 6 days of gloom here in Santa Monica, where it's supposed to be sunny, but it's not. And
May
so
gray.
the May gray is killing me. So I had to come out here and do this out here and have a minute. So yay. Yay. Everything is great. And you're doing well too?
Absolutely. Well, where I'm at, I'm in the southeast, and it's cloudy here today, but it's nice. We actually had a little bit of a situation with our gasoline because of the hack. I'm sure you heard about it. But
yeah, that is insane.
Yeah, but it's come back to normal now. It was only a couple days, but it was interesting.
Yeah,
but
it was
anyway,
like in the 70s when I was a kid, they had that, and they had odd and even days, and the lines would be for miles. My brother used to sell snacks on the car line. He'd walk down the line and he'd sell people things.
I remember that. I remember
he
when
was
I was
about 12.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, we would my mother would take us to go get gas on odd and even days in New York.
Right. Exactly.
And we had to just basically sit in the car with her for like 2 or 3 hours. It wasn't that bad. All right. So anyway, moving on from the past, let's stop visiting that and get to the present. So what we're going to talk about today, I think, is something that's really good for everybody to understand, and I think not everybody does understand it, which is how to become your own publisher. And, Michele is a master of that. I'm just sort of along for the ride here. I'll chime in when I need to. But basically, Michele has had over 5 distinct and knows a thing or two about the ins and outs of the contractual and process parts of your getting paid. And what we do in metadata is a big part of that, Michele, but there's so much more. And one of the things that I think it comes down to for people is figuring out publishing and writer share, right? Because your writer share, yes, you understand you're a writer, you get that share. But on the publishing side, we live in a world where being your own publisher is probably it's probably advisable for you to strongly consider it. But in addition to that, it's not the most difficult thing to do in the world. It takes a little bit of effort, but it's worth it. So with that said, Michele, why don't you tell us a little bit about self-publishing in 2021 and how it relates to Sync?
Sure. Okay. That was a great intro to all of it, Mark. And yes, so it is very, very important to have a publishing company. So now when you sign with your PRO, might be American PRO like Ascap or BMI, not CSAC, because CSAC requires that you have a publishing company. So we will eliminate them from the equation. But when you sign at Ascap, BMI, and if you're foreign and you sign at PRS, at GAMA, at Suiza, wherever your country of origin is, most of the time they are telling you just to have a writer's account. It's almost, in my opinion, like they're thinking you're going to fail. Like they're starting you off on a path of failure, rather than thinking you're going to become very successful and have your own publishing company. They're already marking you to fail. It's easier for them if you just have a writer's account. So that's why, of course, so many people can come to Mark and I and be saying, Yeah, but Ascap says we don't need a publishing company. BMI says it's fine. All the money goes to our writer's share. But it doesn't work like that, especially in sync. You might get the funds, but you won't be able to do the deals because in sync, required in the licenses is publishing information, not just
Mm-hmm.
your writer's PRO. It is required that you have publishing information. It is also required on the cue sheets. The cue sheets list the writers and the publishers. So it doesn't matter where they're sending the money Ascap and BMI, it matters to do these deals. Also, as we've discussed, right, the powers that be think we're not professional and they're afraid to work with us. So if we have no publishing company, that is the biggest, easiest red flag to them. You don't have a publishing company? Okay, look, have a publisher contact me, have a sync agent contact me. Don't contact me. They're afraid of you. They know you don't know what you're doing because you don't even have a publishing company. In addition, to collect your mechanical royalties, not from the MLC. The MLC does not require that you have a publishing company, but Harry Fox does. And they will not, and every record label. So let's say you get a song recorded on a Warner Brothers artist, right? And that's not so impossible. I do it. Everybody does it, right? You know, the HFA, Harry Fox, and the label, should you do a direct mechanical license with the label, will only pay a publisher. They will not do a deal with a songwriter. So there is no way you can sign with Harry Fox without having a publishing company. You have to be a publisher. Then it's your responsibility to pay the writer, which could be yourself, right? But they don't care. They only deal with publishers. And so for all these reasons, it is dire to have a publishing company and, you know, constantly, right, Mark, people are fighting us on it. You know, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to pay the extra money. But in order to be professional, this is among the first things you should do. And for instance, when I signed with BMI, it was 1986 or something like that. And I had a placement. I had my first placement. I had a publishing company. I made a publishing company. I had a sync. I had to. And it's more common now that the PROs are informing the writers, oh, you don't need a publishing company. It's crazy stuff. But again, that's because they're banking on us to fail. They're not banking on us to succeed, because if they were, they would for sure tell us we should have a publishing company. And for instance, also I'll stop in a second, but if you are now if you're not a US national and you're sitting there thinking, well, PRS won't let me have a publishing company, and SOCAN won't let me have a publishing company, and GAMA won't let me have a publishing company. Yeah, that's possible, and that's true. So then you just join BMI or Ascap as a publisher. And as a foreign national, you can do that. You can also, one of my students signed with IMRO, which is the Irish performing rights society, because they were quicker and let her have a publishing company. Also, our new company in the US, Alltrack, you can pretty much get a publishing company in a day. You know, if you want to take a chance, sign with a new PRO. Some of my students did that. You know, you can for sure do that, but you can just sign with BMI and Ascap. It takes some weeks for them to do the paperwork. You pay the fee and you'll have a publishing company, right? So there's the start of the issue.
Yeah, this is why we're having this conversation today, because it's so important. Because if you don't have a publishing company, one way or the other, you're not going to get that share of money, and that's like half your royalties. So you know you've got to get this right. So before we get into setting up, which really doesn't take that much in the US, and we'll talk about international, but before we get into setting up your own publishing company, what case is there for signing with an established publishing company, whether it's Sony ATV or whether it's a more sort of sync-oriented publishing company that will work with you to go out there and pitch your music for opportunities proactively? What's your take on that?
I don't know any that do that. So, you know, I'm 41 years in as a professional, and I have yet to find an entity that pitches better than you would pitch for yourself. So if anybody here knows somebody, send them my way, because I would love to be signed by them. So that said, I don't know anybody. There's no one who does a good job. It's really unfortunate. They're really spotty. Now, do I work with other companies? Of course. And I have some sync agents and I love them dearly.
Yeah.
And if they get me a placement, I am grateful. And the gratitude is huge, but it's so sporadic that I couldn't live on that if I were only relying on that. Or the libraries that I work with, they're wonderful too. Like, I'm not saying don't work with these people. If it's non-exclusive, have a whole arsenal with them. But to sign an exclusive deal with a Sony ATV, and I've done all that, with Universal, with BMG, all those companies, first of all, they encumber the songs. So the music supervisors don't want to work with, especially Cobalt and Peer are smaller, but they're among the worst. They are so strict and so strong, and just the gateway, you cannot get past them. I mean, they don't want to negotiate, and they want the money they want. And, you know, you get a music supervisor who's working on a TV show and needs to put in a song for airing tomorrow. And by the time these people get to the paperwork, it's weeks from now, and it's gone. The sync is done. And but also, if the music supervisor says, I'm so sorry, I only have $1,000, can you do me a favor? They're going to ask for $5,000, even after the music supervisor said, oh, I only have $1,000. So, you know, that's why I do not recommend it. And I know from experience, because I've been signed in the past to exclusive major publishing deals where I've lost out on huge syncs because, and they were co-pub deals, mind you. Let's backtrack and say I already had a publishing company, because I've always had one. I already had a publishing company and they were co-pub deals, but even so, the company that I was signed to had the right to negotiate. And because of that, right? So it really, what has come down over the last decades is the music supervisors don't want to deal with it. So they know that if they want to use one of my hit songs, that, they have to go to Warner Brothers or Sony Records. They have to deal with that. They know that my co-writer is signed to Warner Chappell, so they have to deal with that. So, okay, they're prepared because they want that specific hit song and they have dollars for it. But in general, when they're using our music, right, they're using our music because they want original music, new music, less expensive music to replace that Beyonce song. And so they do not want to go to a big music publisher. And in fact, oftentimes the first thing the music supervisor will say to me or you is, there aren't any music major publishers involved, are there? Like, I'll say it just like that, right? Just like that. Because if there are, they don't want to deal with you and that song because they don't have time, they don't have the money, and they don't want to deal with it. So it encumbers the song completely to have that entity. Now, having market your sync agents does not encumber the song, right? And that's why that's totally fine. But we also don't want to just, you know, rely on Mark, right? He's very busy, right? And also, even if we do rely on Mark, we need to have a publishing company, because he can't pitch our songs and place them if we don't have a publishing company, because he's taking a percentage of the sync fee, master fee, but he's not putting his name on the cue sheet. He is not the publisher. So you need to have a publisher. And so I advise keeping your own publishing. I advise, if you need admin and you think you can't do it yourself, which to me is always crazy, and why we teach these classes and you give this Sync Cafe all the time is to empower us all. It's not that difficult to sign these contracts. They're 2 pages long, and it's not that difficult to maintain our own publishing in our own publishing company and not have to sign a deal. But should we want one, better to sign with someone. Maybe you do admin by the hour. That's the cheapest way. You actually pay them, or they take a small percentage and do the paperwork for you, but they don't have any ownership. That kind of thing is much better, right? you know, and also, as we've discussed, Mark, you don't want to sign with any of those aggregators like TuneCore or Cdbaby or Distrokid. You do not want to give them your publishing administration. That is a kiss of death, because again, the music supervisors find that very unprofessional, and they don't want to negotiate with Distrokid.
No,
it's not really
they just
even
don't.
possible. Yeah, it's like they don't even, and they don't like a Song Trust either, you know, which is another platform that's just taking and sapping percentages out of you for no reason. So I absolutely, Mark as well, we both advocate, don't sign with Song Trust. Don't do that. So yeah, so that's my spiel for that question.
I think that's a really good spiel. I mean, look, at the end of the day, that point that you were making, you know, that if you sign a co-publishing deal with a major or even a minor major, you know, you can end up encumbering all of your music. You know, I've seen this because, you know, I have some famous friends, you know, that have redone all of their hits. And they came to me and they're like, hey, Mark, listen, you know, it would be so great if you went out there and, you know, pitched this on behalf of us, pitched the masters for us. And I was like, okay, but what's the situation with your publishing? And they're like, okay, well, we have our own publishing company. I'm like, yeah, I know that. But what's the admin agreement that you have with a major publisher? I'm not going to say which one. Once they took a look at it, I was like, oh, this is impossible, because we'll have, you know, the hits are always going to cost money, but what about the tracks that are like second or third level? You know, people want to get them for maybe 3, 4, 5,000. And the band is like, yeah, absolutely, go for it. And then the big publisher is going to go, no, our floor is 20,000. Sorry. That's it. End of discussion. That's why it's like you have to be very careful when you sign those deals. They could be complete admin deals where they don't touch the, you know, they don't actually touch the deal making. That's probably a better place to be. You can do that if you want to have somebody admin for you, but a co-publishing deal, they're going to end up sticking their fingers in, and then they could potentially ruin everything.
And even if you have an admin deal with someone like a Cobalt or a Peer or Sony, they also encumber the songs. Because first of all, the music supervisor sees their name and doesn't want to deal with it. So they don't even want to hear the spiel about the fact that it's admin and you can this and that. They're like, they don't want to know, and they don't want to deal with it. And I have had situations where I've had a co-writer who signed an admin deal with one of those companies, and those companies encumbered the songs, even called me up screaming at me for placing the songs, because they admin, and it's supposed to go through them. Are you crazy? First of all, I didn't even know. Like, a lot of times people will sign a deal and not tell you. Right.
Yeah.
And so even with admin, you have to be really careful about those majors to make sure that, you know, I don't advise them at all. That's the bottom line. The music supervisors don't like to see their names anywhere that frightens them.
So before we get into start how you go about starting up your own thing, I mean, basically what we're saying here is that, you know, whether you have a sync agent or whether you have a publisher, it doesn't matter. You have to rely on yourself. You have to really rely on yourself and know where your music sits in terms of ownership and in terms of administration. Even if you end up going with a publisher, even if you end up having a big third party or a smaller third party as your administrator for your publishing, you've got to get this right, and you've got to own it. You know, you've got to own it, not just from a ownership point of view, but you've got to own the knowledge of what's going on. And that's really where we're going to go with this discussion. But one thing that a couple people asked about was, why no Song Trust? Let's elaborate on that a little bit. What is it about Song Trust that's onerous?
Okay, so the things about Song Trust that are onerous are the facts that they're often incorrect. Every webinar that I watch about Song Trust, they're giving out incorrect information. That's a big red flag and scares me. In addition, they're sort of not a publishing company. To music supervisors, they're like this low-class kind of entity that a songwriter took on, not knowing what they were doing and having their stuff admin. And when the music powers that be see that, again, they think we're not professional, because no professional that I work with or know would sign with Song Trust. And so this is a red flag. that when you know, if you're telling them, oh, my publishing is with Songtrust, they don't like that. They don't trust that. They think you are not knowledgeable, don't know what you're doing. And Songtrust often, unfortunately, does not know what they're doing. And every time that I watch a webinar, and I'll find out that the person who gave the webinar was 3 months ago, you know, selling food in a deli. Right?
We have talked about this. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, he used to be a car salesman, you know, in Encino, and now they're talking about, you know, your publishing rights.
Right. So they have no experience. Yes. And they're, you know, the last webinar I was on, they were telling people about the producer share, and there is no producer share in publishing. And they were, you know, so they're giving incorrect information.
It makes me laugh, but it's sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. And I do not recommend them. There's much better ways. They're taking a percentage, and you don't need them to do it. And so that's my problem with Songtrust. And I believe that it's not professional.
Yes. And Prashant asked, is it okay for to have Songtrust just for admin? No, I think that just don't be involved at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, don't be involved, be professional, learn how to do it yourself. And then if you need somebody else to do it, hire someone who's reputable, that the music supervisors are used to dealing with, or sign with a company that does admin, that's reputable, that's been in the business, someone who's been in the business for 20, 30 years, really knows what they're doing. And there's a lot of those, but again, it's not necessary. Because it's not necessary if you're releasing songs on the DSPs, and it's not necessary for sync. All of this one can do themselves. It's very simple and easy, and that's why we're being educated. This is not rocket science. Yes, if you're going to get a publishing deal, if you're going to get a record deal, and the contract is 500 pages like they are, then you need a lawyer, right? Then you need a lawyer. You know, first and foremost, to go through that. But when you get a sync license, that's 2 pages, and a mechanical license is a 1 page or 2. Also, they all say the same thing. You know, it's not necessary, right? And the music supervisors feel much more confident working quickly with somebody who can, because even if you work with Songtrust, right, if the music supervisor comes to you, you're going to have to say, oh yes, let me send you to Songtrust, and they'll take care of it. Well, Songtrust might take 2 weeks to take care of it as well. The music supervisor does not want to do that. They just want to deal with you. One stop, clear it, take care of it. You have all your paperwork and ducks in a row, and that's it. They don't want to have to get off the phone with you and onto the phone with Songtrust. You know, they just don't want to do it. Yeah.
What you want to put yourself in a position like I was this morning, okay? I'm having my coffee. A music supervisor. Mark, I need blank kind of music for a trailer. What do you have? I've got a really tight deadline. I'm like, oh, okay. You want something like that? Here you go. Boom. And I sent them a link from my Disco account, and that was it. Who knows whether or not it's going to happen? But that's the kind of ability you want to set yourself up for, that you're going to be able to say, okay, I've got something for you right now, or at the worst, hey, check this out. I have to get in touch with my other, you know, my other writer, you know, that'll be a quick phone call, whatever. But you need to be in control of what you're presenting somebody. And if you have other people in control of the process, it's going to set you up badly for sync. And that's really the point here that Michele has just made, is that, you know, a music supervisor wants to deal with people who are in control. When they start to see that you're not in control of the process, they start to go, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to work with this. Let me look for a plan B and C. And that plan B and C, while they're waiting, may become a plan A, and you may lose the opportunity. So that's why this is so important. And with that said, we've got a couple questions, and then we're going to get into the steps here. But, you know, going back to what you said, Michele, you know, the reasons that we do these things, like we did with metadata, is that we want to show you that this stuff is not alchemy. There is a way to do it on the basic level. You know, if you really go deep into what we do with metadata, yeah, it's not alchemy, but it does get complicated. But we can show you the basics here that you can use in order to be successful and in order to reduce the levels of friction between you and a deal. That's why we're here. Okay, so Lily has a question. Okay, thanks for confirming a lot of what I'm already doing. When working directly with a music supervisor or film producer, do you ever have to supply the contract yourself? And so did you find it helpful to have a lawyer draft contract templates for you? Well, my answer to that is that I have a bunch of templates already that I use. And most of the time when I'm dealing with a studio or a game developer or a major company, I'm always using their contract. They'll never take my contract, and that's fine. I have no problem. As long as they take my invoice, I'm okay. So, that's really what matters. So at the end of the day, if Netflix sends me an agreement, I know what it says. They all look the same. They all say the same thing. Once you've seen one, you just sign it. But I've gone with smaller production houses where they've asked me, for an independent film to put together an agreement, and I have those agreements. So I am ready for that when it's called for. But the majority of the time, it's going to be the buyer who's going to send you their agreement, and their agreements are totally above board. It might take them 6 months to pay you sometimes, but their agreements are totally above board. You just read through it. If you feel nervous about any of the terms, you can, have a lawyer look at it and have them give you the okay. There's some lawyers that I can suggest in the Sync Summit group in Facebook. I'll be happy to do that for you. But at the end of the day, it's usually going to be the buyer who's going to send you that agreement.
Yep. Same exactly here. I mean, I've had thousands of agreements, and maybe 1% I've generated the agreement. And again, like Mark said, it's usually because it's a very small new production that I'm doing a favor for anyway, and they don't know how to do it, and they don't have a contract. And I have those templates, and those templates are online, and they're super easy to get, and you can always ask me or Mark for
we have them.
We have them, and so yeah, it's very, very rare, very rare.
Okay, so Chuck is asking a question now, and let's get this out of the way so we don't have to talk about it again. Retitling. All right, so retitling, you and I go back and forth about this one. And, I think we should put it in context, because sometimes retitling is okay, but a lot of the time, I feel like if you've got like 5 different sync agents retitling your music, or 5 different libraries retitling your music, it causes complete chaos. But with that, and that's why I don't like that kind of retitling. But with that said, Michele, there are examples that you have provided where it makes sense to do so. So talk about that from your perspective as a writer.
Okay, great. So so as a writer, I do not want to encumber my songs in any way. They are my copyrights. I own them. I can put them anywhere I want with any title I want. And if it's going to help me earn some income, get some credits, have some placements, have some cuts, I am going to do it. So that is my position. Some companies that I work with have me retitle the song completely. So if the song is called Summer Jam, I might call it This Jam of Summer. And I keep track of those titles. These days, mostly someone is going to take my song Summer Jam and they're going to put their initials in front of it. So like there's a company I work with, Pink Shark, and they go PSN, Summer Jam, right? There's another company I work with and they put SD, Summer Jam. So they're not totally changing the title, but what they're doing is putting their moniker on it in the registrations, re-registering the songs at my PRO. And that way, when the placement happens, they can get their share. I am totally fine with it. I am happy. Like even the other day, there was a cue sheet in my CSAC portal and I saw that a company got a placement that's never got one from me before. And I was really happy. And they have it registered with their little, prefix or suffix. And that's, so for me, I think it's advantageous. Right now, I can put that credit on my credit sheet. I can earn the writer's income from it forever and ever. They can have the publishing, but yet they don't own the copyright. They did not put their name on the copyright, and they did not use my original title, which would encumber the copyright, giving them the publishing. So that's why I retitle. I worked on Guiding Light for 18 years, and my deal with them was they got half the publishing. Every song I wrote, I retitled and then sent to them and put in their library, and I made gazillions. And so I think that It's a good thing for writers. And I also will say that, yeah, music supervisors and others will tell you no, because it's more, first of all, it's more people coming at them with songs. If
Yeah.
I pitch a song to a music supervisor, they know where it came from. It's really rare that it's gonna come from Mark, come from me, and they're not gonna know who it came from, because they're immediately gonna write me. And once they write me, they know that it came from me. And
Of
Mark,
course.
you've discussed in the past, should there be some kind of dispute, Mark and I will split it. We're not gonna upset the
No.
music supervisor by giving them a hard time. We're just gonna go between the two of us and go, hey, let's work this out. We both, sent it.
That's what I always do.
Yeah,
exactly.
the music supervisor never even has to know. So most of the time, I do not find that if 4 people send the same song to the music supervisor, they notice or they care, because they might like Mark better than me and not listen to it from me. They might listen to it from Mark.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. Okay. But that's why that's why I like retitling. That's why it's fine if more than one person pitches a song. And the music supervisors are desperately wanting to fill that queue. All they want to do is get it off their plate. So they don't care. Like, they don't care where it came from. As long as they can license it well and it worked and they trust the source, they do not care. Their mission is, if all the producers and director and everybody, the showrunners, agree to it, they're like, thank God, let's wipe this one off. So that's why I retitle, and it has served me, beyond well, and I believe in it.
Okay, so I'm going to say a little something contextually, because the way you do it is something that I can get with, so to speak, because you're in control of it. You know exactly what you're doing. For a lot of people, they will just sign deals and with companies that will retitle, and they don't know what they're retitling in terms of what the retitling is. And at the end of the day, they're not being given the information. I think that that's really where it becomes an issue for me, is that, you sign with 5 different companies, they all retitle, and then you don't know what's what, and everything becomes confused by the time it gets to the music supervisor. That's really, for me,
that does
where
happen
the problem
for me.
happens.
Yeah, that does happen for me. And I mean, there was a placement I had recently on The Daily Show, and I had to go ask seven libraries and song pluggers who placed it. I finally found out, but it showed up in my TuneSat detection, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So basically, I was writing them, thanking them, saying, hey, Mark, this is so cool. If you place this, I just want to thank you. But I had no idea where it came from till finally I found it out. So that does happen. And there's oftentimes I go in my CSAC account and I see these song titles, I don't know them. But then when I see who the publishers are, then I know, okay, this is the song I sent to Joe Schmo, and this is the title he gave it. So usually it can be figured out. So that's why I don't have a problem with it. But yeah, there are times when it's a mystery and I have to go poll all of you and ask you, did you place this?
So at the end of the day, if you want to retitle, just be aware and be in control of it. Just don't leave it to somebody to just do whatever. I think that's really the point.
Yeah, and you could even ask them, can you just give me the name, you retitle it, so that I have it in my files. And if you're working closely with somebody, of course they're going to do that. I sometimes am so busy I don't remember to do it, actually, even me. But if you do you do a deal, you did 5 songs, they retitle them, just say, great, just send me the retitle so I know what they are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on. I think we've talked that issue through, because I think we did a pretty detailed job talking that through. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, well, this is a question from Don Mack. Let's talk about this for a couple minutes, and we will get to how you're creating a publishing entity. We will get to that in a few minutes, but I want to get these questions out of the way. Please discuss the best way to contact music supervisors and who are they? Okay, I'm going to just do this very quickly. This is a very long question and almost its own conversation. So I don't really want to get into it too much, but basically, the 3 things that I say are preparation, promotion, and then follow-up. Those are the 3 things that you have to keep in mind. But if you want to contact people, you have to be politely persistent. You have to send links that don't expire, links that allow streaming, links that allow downloading of MP3s. You have to have all of your metadata correct. And you have to just, you know, understand who you're sending to. You have to think of that first and foremost in my mind. Who are you sending your music to? What kinds of projects do they have? Have you researched them? Do you know what this person usually uses? Have you looked at their social media? Have you looked at their IMDb? All of these things are important. We've covered them in many other sessions, and we cover them in classes and stuff, but at the end of the day, you know, if you really want to learn more about who music supervisors are and the best way to contact them, you can go through the archives of our chats. You can get in touch with us directly, or, you know, there's plenty of courses, ours and others, that will teach you those sorts of basics. So I'll move on from that. Let's
Yeah, there
see.
seems like there's a lot of questions in the chat, huh?
Yeah, there really are. Okay, but I like
We should
that.
go. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In the Q&A, there was just one question, so I answered it live. There we go. Okay. And that's done. All right. So now let's see. We have a lot of questions here. Let's take a question from Facebook. Okay. Catherine asks, is it better to also sign up as a publisher with your PRO? I think that's getting a little ahead of the conversation. So maybe we
but
can
we
answer
did
that
discuss that in the right in the beginning, where we said yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then why does BMI have that 200% thing if you don't have publishing in the publishing option too? I think that's
I can answer if you want.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
you know, originally, so did Ascap and CSEC. Everybody was working on a 200% system, 100% being the writer's share and 100% being the publisher's share. And we still really work on that system. You know, like if we're putting our metadata in our iTunes, the percentages would be, if Mark and I write a song, 50-50, 100% of the writers, 50-50, 100% of the publishers, but only BMI in their registration still does that. So when you register a song and you're a BMI writer or publisher, you're going to register the song in 200%, 100% of the splits for the writers, 100% for the publishers. But ASCAP and CSAC do 50-50s, so equaling a whole 100%. So like if I write a song with Mark and there's only 2 writers, each of us gets 25%. But at BMI, each of us gets 50%, because they just work on a 200% system in their registration. So all it is about the registration, but it's the same percent. The half goes to the writer, half goes to a publisher. And maybe I could start with this, because this is like the first thing I teach in my class. Yep. Okay, what is a writer's share? What is a publisher's share? So when a song is created, there is automatically a writer's share. There's a pie. The pie is split in half. Half is writers, half is publishers. So there is always a publishing share when you create a song, whether you create a specific publishing company or not. There is always the writer's share and the publisher share. That cannot be altered. You cannot alter those shares. The pie stays intact. So that means in copyright that the writer's share cannot be 60% and the publisher's share 40%. It does not work that way. Now, can you do weird splits within that 50%? Yeah, you can give 10% here and 2% there and 5% there, and you can divvy it up. But always the pie is 50-50. And so, being that the case, whether you say that we each got 25% to equal 50%, or we each got 50% to equal 100%, as in the case of BMI, it's the same issue. It's just half and half. So,
right.
You know, and again, if we assign a publishing company to our 50% publishing, which we all should do as we're discussing here, right? But if we don't, there's still a publisher share. It doesn't go away. It's born with the song.
Exactly. And this is why I always hate that, you know, that 200% thing, because everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people get caught up in it. It's basically when you look at a song, right? Okay, you've got the 100% on this side, that's the writing and the publishing. and that's split 50-50. And then you've got the master share, which is split however, it could be just one or it could be several master owners. And that's it. That's what happens in a sync. So at the end of the day, you know, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're getting all of the 100% on each side. Okay, so with that said, what's the first step for us when we're creating our publishing company? What do we need to do? We need to start an LLC, or can we do it without one?
No, we don't ever need an LLC. And I have never had an LLC and don't want one because it's too much work for my feeble little songwriter publisher brain. I don't want an LLC. In the past, you had to have a DBA, but
Right.
you don't even have to do that anymore, because in the past it worked with your checking account and you were being paid paper checks and the PROs were paying you that way. These days, they don't even care if you have a DBA. All you have to do is sign and create the publishing company at ascap.com or bmi.com or csac.com and make a publishing company. They usually ask you for 5 names. And the reason why that is because 2 people cannot have the same publishing company name. So you might pick a name that's already in use. And because of that, they ask you for 5 things. So what is the first thing probably you all should do? Think of your names. What would you want to call your publishing company? For instance, mine was called Sweeter Songs at BMI. But then when I changed to CSAC, I had to change it. So now I have Even Sweeter Songs, right? And my Ascap company is still Sweeter Songs. And my first publishing company ever was called Slice Meister Music, because I had no idea what to call it. And somebody said I was the Slice Meister. So I have no idea what that means. But I said, okay. So just think, you know, or you can just call it like Mark Freezer Music, Mark Freezer Publishing, right? You can use your name. It doesn't matter, but you need 5. So think about what you want it to be. Next thing you do, you register it with ASCAP or BMI, right? Best places to go. I recommend BMI because of the whole other class we could teach on ASCAP, which my people here who are my students know what I've already discussed
and
about ASCAP.
We've talked a lot about that too.
Yeah. Yes, we have at the cafe. We really don't want to sign with ASCAP. BMI is a little more expensive, but it's worth it. Like Baskin and Robbins ice cream costs a bit more, but it's worth it. You know, you want to do that. At BMI right now, it's $150 to form a non-LLC publishing company. Right? If you have an LLC, it's $250. If you're all technical and want to have an LLC, you can. I'm not saying you can't. You can, but it's not required. You don't need a DBA even anymore, like I had to. You used to. So because they just direct deposit the money in any bank account you give them. They don't care if it's a personal bank account, a business account. They don't care. Right? You just fill out the banking forms and they send you the money. So all my accounts, you know, I have a bunch of publishing accounts, all from BMI, CSAC, ASCAP, all of them go to one bank account. It's right now I changed it to a personal account. They don't care. They send all the publishing money to the personal account. It doesn't matter to them. Whatever you tell them is fine. So you fill out their paperwork, which now in the old days you had to actually do by certified mail and fill out paper. And now you just do it online. Life is easy. It's beautiful. You just go online, type up the information online, press send, and then you wait a while because they claim that because of COVID, they're backed up. So it could take some weeks till they give it to you, and you won't know what your name is, which name they picked, and they will pick their first choice if it's available. It's not like they're going to randomly decide. They're going to pick, but if your first choice is not available, then they'll go to your second choice and so on to clear your publishing company. So it's very simple. And then after that, you are a publisher and you have a publishing company that you can now sign up with Harry Fox, and you have a publishing company, and you can submit your songs to music supervisors and be able to list the publishing information that you have a publishing company. And they also give you a CAEIP or IPI number, whatever you want to call it. They give you your ID number, just like your writer's number. They give you that number, which is your social security number for your publishing account. It never changes. So now, like my publishing account number at PRS or at GEMA, the German company, is the same number. The number travels with your company. It doesn't change. So it's always with your publishing company that you've established, right? Unless you establish another publishing company and then you'd have a new number, but we don't have to do that. We can have one publishing company.
Now,
Yeah.
you see at its most basic form how easy this is. You don't even need to set up an LLC. Now, of course, me, because I'm more complicated, I have an LLC. So, there are some advantages if you want to have an LLC in terms of liability, in terms of taxes, etc. If you want to go down that path, then you have to set it up with the Department of State in your individual state, and then you can use that LLC as your publishing entity. But the big point here that's important for everybody to take away is that that's completely optional. You don't have to do that in order to get started with collecting your publisher's share and having a publishing company. And that's really, really cool. And I bet that that's something a lot of people here didn't even know. So that's
and it's
really,
for
really
your taxes,
cool.
the same thing. When you fill your taxes out, my accountant does not care. Like if I had an LLC, he'd have to do certain things, right? But he's just able to do my taxes. I do business taxes and Schedule C, and he can do it the same just fine without an LLC. It doesn't matter. I can still deduct everything from my music stuff that I deduct, and it doesn't make a difference at all to anybody. So yeah, I know people don't realize that. They're all freaked out about getting an LLC, and oh my God, I can't even. I'd have to hire you if I had an LLC. I wouldn't know. Like, too much paper.
Oh God,
I can
make it very simple for you. It's simple to start up an LLC, but you don't need. But you don't want one.
No, I don't want one. It's the basics. Maybe I have been advised because I have been audited. So now that's an interesting point. Is that I've been audited a few times, and my accountants have always said to me, if I had an LLC, I probably wouldn't have gotten audited because as an individual, right, with I have DBA, but don't even need it. But as an individual, I make too much money, so I flag them. But as an LLC, I make so little that they would care less. So that is an interesting consideration, right? I get flagged. I get flagged a lot as an individual because I make too much money. So, and then they want to see, why did I spend this X amount on guitar strings? So, someday you might consider that, but I really advise, don't worry about that. Just make a publishing company,
Yeah, just start getting paid your publishing share. That's really what really what we're saying at the end of the day. You don't have to make it complicated. You don't have to have an LLC, though. I mean, the advantages of the LLC, I think you realize it by now. The not getting audited thing, yes, I haven't been audited, so I got that.
That's good. It's
got
bad.
That going for me. Yeah, I've heard it tell. But
makes you can if you can see why people end their lives over that. That's how hellish it is. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from that. I hope it never. Have a feeling that it's unfortunate. It does happen. But the main thing that we're talking about here is your first step to getting paid as an independent songwriter. So, this is something that if you haven't done it, you've got to do it. And, we've given you the basics on how to do that. So let's see. There's a question here from Jim Kumarel, and I actually wanted to answer this question with you, Michele. I get that they're not right for us, but what do the big publishers do that's worthwhile for anybody? I can give a little bit of context to that, and then Michele. Yeah, I mean, look, there are some deals that people get from big publishers that may make it worth their while to consider them. First of all, an upfront fee. Let's say that they think you're the next Timberland. If you're the next Timberland, you're probably going to get some deals where they're going to give you a significant amount of upfront money for being in their stable, so to speak, or being in their studio. And that's something that you might want to question. Like, is this upfront money worth me signing to this publisher? You have to think, okay, will that work? In general, maybe it will work, but will it work for sync? Will they actually go out there and help find deals for me. They may or they may not. It's a crapshoot. They all tend to work differently, and that certainly would be something that I would consider if I had something on the table with upfront was, okay, well, there's this, that's nice, this money over here, but then what are they going to do afterwards? Like, okay, so it's sort of like the argument that I always say, it's like, yeah, I'm winning the war, but how do I win the peace? Because that's really the hard one. And when you think about it, it's like, there's the money on the table, but then you have to zoom out and say, okay, but what's like 2 or 3 years down the road? Am I going to get this money and then nothing's going to happen? And then I'm tied to these people. And every time that I get a sync agent or I have something go out and somebody wants to use my music, it gets stuck in committee on the publishing side. So you got to make sure that if you're signing with the publisher, that they're going to be able to be an active participant in your success. And, I would say that with some major publishers, with some artists and songwriters, they do get proactive, but it's a sliver of the percentage of people that they represent that they really get proactive with. And usually those people are household brands, basically. So your music is probably not going to be given top priority most of the time. And I know major publishers would probably argue with me on that, but that's the reality as I've seen it. And then you have to think, okay, well, what about signing with an independent publisher? That could work, if they're gonna do admin, if they have a track record of actually, actively promoting for sync, and they're giving you something upfront in return, maybe it's worth considering. But I think the smartest way is, regardless of any of those deals coming your way, to have your own publishing entity and then work with them as your publisher and work out a deal where you work with them, assigning rights to them for a specific amount of time or specific purposes. That way you're still in control. So that's my 2 cents about it. Michele, what do you think?
Yes. So first of all, if you look at the history of music publishing, maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, publishers were hands-on. They usually signed a writer because they believed in the writer and the music. Now, today, they sign the writer because they have some entity that is making money already that they want to get a piece of, and they're hands-on and their name on, and so they want to sign the writer. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with their belief in the writer. When I signed my first publishing deal, it was 1990, and I had $9 in the bank and a car that my friends called the Road Warrior. It had no hubcaps, and I was waiting tables, and I had not a penny. And yes, I signed that deal because I had a hit song on the radio, but I had $9. And so the publishing company gave me a boatload of money, right? That I had never seen zeros like that in my life, right? I sent it to my dad to look at. I mean, I was almost 30, and I could not believe that these zeros were on this check, right? Even my bank wouldn't take the money because I was someone who had $9 in the bank. I had to go get a cashier's check. So I had no money. So yeah, I had to go back to Island Music. So embarrassing. Say, I can't even deposit this. They had to take me to their bank, get me a cashier's check, basically cash it was insane. I had nothing. So yes.
You should have changed banks.
I know. I still have that lousy bank. So I stuck, but who would have taken me? I had $9. I had no money to put in the account except this check that nobody believed was mine. So, yeah, it was a little difficult. So yes. So did that help me? Yes. And is that the reason I signed? Yes. I signed because they were giving me money and I needed money, but I also signed because I thought they believed in me. Right.
Yeah.
And they did actually, but it was 30 years ago. And in the short time I was signed to that deal, it was bought by Polygram. And once Polygram came in, nobody believed in me anymore. And it was a big monstrous corporation like BMG and Sony and Universal, which now owns that catalog because it's changed hands so many times. And yeah, so it was not advantageous. It was not good for me creatively, but I got some money. So okay, so that, like Mark was saying, that's usually why people sign deals, is because they give them a bunch of money. So if Snoop signs the deal with BMG and BMG gives him $3 million or $10 million, yeah, he puts it in his bank account, he earns the interest on it, he takes it, he doesn't care about the royalties that he's not getting because they're recollecting and he's unrecouped. Yeah, that's why those people sign those deals. Also, you have to look at the fact that if they're having a hit song, right? Like I was signed because I had a hit song, you know, then again, the music supervisors know if they want to license that hit song, they have to pay for it. They have to go to a major publisher. They're prepared for that. They know the deal.
Exactly.
But the chances of if Snoop writes a song with me and we have a brand new song, the chances of it getting synced are small, even with Snoop, because his publishing company is encumbering that song. So his major hits will get synced, but all those other songs he might have around, they're just sitting there. So this is not happy. And there are too many Snoops at the publishing company. So if Snoop is not, you know, thank God someone like Snoop is doing hair cream commercials and he knows how to market himself. But were it another artist who doesn't market themselves, they would be in the same position we're in, just with more zeros, right? Because they're not getting anything happening because their songs are getting encumbered. So I do not recommend it. Now, I had that one deal, then I had another deal. I had my last real deal in 1992. Why? Because they were encumbering my songs, and already in 1992, I was proactive and pitching my own songs. I learned really quickly how to do it, how to make connections, how to network, right? Which is what Mark and I teach everyone how to do. I learned very early, very young, how to do that. And every time they would encumber the song, because I would write a song for something and it would sit on their desk too long, or they wanted too much money and the director and the showrunner didn't have it, and on and on. I learned 30 years ago, this is not good. And I do not want to be doing this anymore. So that is why I recommend not. Now, in terms of also major publishers, you know, if you are good at networking and get yourself out there, I know all the major publishers. Like I can call Jody Gerson up on the phone. She likes me, we're friends, and I can say, hey, Jody, I really want to write with this writer of yours. Can you hook me up? She'll hook me up. I don't need to be her writer to do that if she thinks it's a worthwhile collaboration. So we can make friends with these publishers even and get them to do stuff with us, and even not sign with them if they think we're cool. So I don't advise it. Plus, you're always unrecouped because that money that you get is advance money. It is not free money. It is not like, oh, they just give you a paycheck and they sign you and they don't get the money back. That money is always recoupable. And, you know, if you want an advance and you're a big writer, your PROs will give you an advance too. And that usually those advances come with no percentage, right? They just recoup. You don't have to sign a deal where they're taking 50% to get that advance. You can just get your PRO to give you an advance, and then they're not taking anything. They're just collecting as you know, as your royalties come in. So that's another option. And someone like Snoop can go to his PRO and get a bunch of money too. He doesn't need to have a publishing deal to get a bunch of advance money if he wants to buy another house. So there are other options. So this is why I don't recommend it, but that is why people sign publishing deals, is because they think they need them. They think they will get attention, but they don't. They think they're incapable of doing their own song registrations, which they can do, or they could have an assistant or an intern be doing for them, right? Katy Perry needs her new songs registered. She could have someone who's working for her hourly to go register her songs. She doesn't need to have a publisher do it, but most people think they need that. And we're all here in this fabulous cafe all the time learning, we don't need that. We can do that. I've learned how to do it and have been doing it my whole career with thousands of pieces of music, you know? So if you have 20 pieces of music or 100 pieces of music or 5 pieces of music, why do you need to do that? You know, it doesn't make sense to be giving away 50% of your royalties to a publishing company when you can do that. And usually they're not doing much for you. You have to do that for you, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because even when I was signed, I got all my own cuts and all my own placements. So yeah.
You know, that's just, It's so sad and happy. It makes me sad and happy at the same time to hear that. I got all my own placements, but yet they were getting half.
Yeah, they were
It's
getting
just
half.
like, ah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and they weren't even nice about it because they were competitive. So that's another issue that we have to look at. It is, if you're really proactive and you're good at it, they don't like that, the publishers. There are some publishers that forbade their writers to pitch their own songs because it was competition for them. But what happened in the end, the writers got dropped, they didn't make any money and didn't get any cuts or placements, right? But their
Exactly.
publishers forbade them to do it themselves. So that's ugly, that's not nice. So, yeah, that's all I
Yeah.
have to say about
Well, I think
that.
well, I think that's I think it's some good advice. I mean, look, at the end of the day, to make a very quick synopsis, you need to be in control. That's why being a self-publisher is key. All right, so
Can we
got
answer
past-
Bill's question? Because
Oh, I
he's
wanted
just up in top of the chat. I think we might have skipped over it.
Oh, no. Let's see, what was Bill's question? Because I was going to
About
bring
the
up another one.
MLC.
Oh, yeah, let's answer it. I thought it was answered in the context of the chat. I saw that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't
Go
see it
ahead.
answered in the chat, but just quickly. So Bill, if it was answered, I'm sorry, but you don't have to have a publisher to register your songs with the MLC. And I did mention that in the beginning.
Yeah.
You can just be a self-administrated songwriter. It's one of the few places you do not need a publishing company or have if you have an outside publisher, they will do it for you. But if you're a songwriter without a publishing company, which Mark and I are telling you is not a good idea, but if you are, then they will pay you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, so going on from that,
Mhm.
Holly Freeling. Hey, Holly, she has a question. Can a publishing company also cover other media such as books and videos? I'm writing a book about psychotherapy. I'd rather simplify if possible. Yeah, this is really just about the music. This is just songwriting. That's a totally different thing. Like a book publishing company is, that's not a conversation we're having today.
Yeah,
we're just going to move on.
Exactly. Apples and oranges. Totally right. Exactly.
A book publishing company is like a consumer goods company. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. So we'll move on. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see here. I'm just going past a lot of questions that were answered.
Okay.
And I'm fast forwarding. So let's go to that. And then we've got some Q&A in the Q&A. And then also we've got some Facebook stuff. So let's do that. Okay. Okay, I have set up, this is a good question. I think we've answered it to some degree, but Madeline Preissner asks, I have set up a publishing company with BMI, but don't know exactly what being a publisher entails. Is it just promotion and keeping track of contacts and payments? To a degree, I'd say yes. I mean, it's just making sure that, when there's something where somebody wants to license license a song that you've written, contractually, you have an entity that you've created, and it can be Mark Freezer Publishing, or it can be my actual company, Remora Holdings, and either one, as long as it's registered with your PRO, that can be the entity that you put into your metadata that will go in a Q sheet and get you paid. So that's that's a lot of what we're talking about doing, setting up a publishing company so that you can do that administration.
Right. And as we discussed, there's a pie. There's a pie.
Yeah.
And you have a publishing pie, and you're just assigning your publishing pie, the publishing company, from yourself. So, and why do you need to do that? Once again, because that is what's professional. That is what's required in every sync license. That is what's required in every Q sheet. And that is what's required for every mechanical license should you have physical sales of your music released on a record. So it is required. So you have to have a publishing company to be a professional. And it is the admin, of course, publishing. Look, when I tell people what is a publishing company, they always tell me, oh, they go and pitch songs for you. Oh, they go and they get money from you. No. What a publishing company's job is admin. That is their job. The other things, they might do the other things. They might pitch your songs, and they might find you work and make collaborations. They might, but their job is administration. And so you, as your own publisher, you are the entity that is administrating your own music, because if you're a professional songwriter, you are making money, and that requires administration. And so does all the paperwork, which includes registering the songs at your PRO, registering them at the MLC, filing the cue sheets, making sure they're correct, filing your contracts, having everything in wherever you want to house it, your hard drive or paper or whatever you want, having it in your filing cabinet. So you, the publishing company, right, are the ones who are doing that administration. So
Yep.
You need to have that.
Yeah. And if you don't want to handle that, then you should look for somebody to do an administrative deal with. And, we're not going to get into who you should work with one way or the other, but it's really a decision that you have to make. If you want to do
there are lots.
Yeah, there's lots of them. Yeah. Okay. So the next question, Chuck, this is a funny question. Were you ever sued? Okay. And I know what he's getting at. Have you ever been sued for any copyright infringement, anything like that? No, no. You just keep things, you keep on top of your business, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's very rare. It's very, very rare.
Okay, so then here's a question here. Okay, Chuck, yes, this is publishing related, and it will go to a lot of deals that are going on right now. How can Universal justify the $400 million they paid for Bob Dylan's catalog? Future earnings, simple as that. Future earnings. That's it.
It's based on multiples. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not looking at the next 5 years. They're looking at the next 100. And that's it. Until the copyright runs out, they'll make their money back. Okay. Jenny Haley asked, if a song has been signed with a publisher, is there a certain time after which you can get it back? I have heard after 35 years. Is this true?
Well, I can answer that. I can help with that.
Go ahead.
So,
yeah.
Some publishing deals have reversions. For instance, my first deal did not have a reversion. My second deal actually had a reversion, which meant that after a period of time, mine was only 1 year after the deal ended, that if the copyrights were not exploited, and by exploited, they defined exploited in my contract, being the songs had to be cut by a major label artist. So even syncs were not being exploited in my contract. I got all my songs back, and now I got them all back from Universal. Universal was very unhappy. But my original contract allowed for that. My first contract did not. So now those songs are still at another Universal company. However, it is now, 2001, and I signed that deal in 1990, and some of those songs were created before then, which makes them eligible to be recaptured in the 35-year deal. So what I have to do is I have to hire a lawyer who does that, which can be very expensive. So now I have to weigh, is it worth it, right? Is it worth it to get my copyrights back? Because it might cost me more than I'm making on them. So, or is it worth it to maybe pick 5 songs that are heavy earners and I get them back? So I'm contemplating that for sure. What I want to do. It's a very small window between 30 and 35 years that you have to try to get these songs to revert back to you. But the issue is this is only an American situation. So I might get my songs reverted back to me that are signed to this publishing company, but only for the US because GEMA and PRS don't recognize that reversion. They don't recognize it. So Universal in Germany and Universal in the UK still are going to own my copyrights. So it's kind of an odd thing. Whereas when I actually have the reversion in my contract, those are mine. They reverted back to me 100% worldwide. I got them back. So that said, I do advise that you do a deal, if you should do a deal, which I don't advise, right? Because Mark and I are advising you don't do a publishing deal. But should you do one, that you make sure that you discuss with the lawyer who creates the paperwork like I did to make sure there is a reversion clause that after a period of time, usually it's like 7 years, 10 years. I was just lucky, my attorney said he was doing golf with the publisher on the golf course, and they just did this. So so you can eventually get your songs back if they're not cut. And these days they're going to take your syncs, but in those days that nobody cared about syncs, so they didn't. But to make sure if the songs have not been cut or synced, that you get them back. And even if they have been, maybe that there's a period of time that you get them back, and you would put that in that contract, right? For your publishing company, because of course, as we're discussing here, you have established your own publishing company, and that publishing company is what has been signed by that major publisher, right? And so you can, but the 35-year thing is very interesting. And since I fall into that category with about 25 songs, I am thinking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you have to just, when you're making deals now, you have to think, I'm the master of my domain. I own everything in my castle and my land. And I am going to lease out to people my rights as I see fit. So you're in charge of all of your rights. This is the way I like to look at it, because I do a lot of work with the Japanese market, and the way it works in Japan is that the management companies own everything. So you're like the management companies there. You own everything. You want to be in a position where you own everything, and then you can lease it out to different people for different purposes, for sync, for publishing, for master promotion, for master exploitation, whatever it is. You always want to make sure that you're in control. And however you take the advice that we're giving you in how to deal with your publishing, you always want to be in control. Okay, so
and I own all the publishing to my major label songs except for one. I own two. I own all of the publishing, and that's so valuable, because if I want to be someday selling my catalog, right, which I get asked to sell, but I don't want to right now. But if I wanted to, I own everything of my share. Right. How nice is that? How valuable is that?
So Bill Madison's not here anymore, but he asked a good question, and we can answer this quickly because we've got about 15-20 minutes left, and I want to try to get some more questions. Okay, so what does a sub-publisher do? Well, if you want your catalog, your songs to be exploited in a different country, you have to do one of two things. You could set up your own company in that country, and then you could register with that country's PRO, and you could set up a couple of employees to go out there and work as your administrators in that market. Or more likely and more advisable, you can sign your rights to you can assign a sub-publisher to administer your rights in a foreign country. And that's basically what you use a sub-publisher for. It's not a domestic thing. So basically, I know that Michele has songs with one of my clients, Avex, and basically what she has is a sub-publishing agreement with them. So they administer, and they also will maybe possibly promote, but
they have actually, believe it or not, they have.
Hey,
they have a little bit. Yeah, they have a little bit. I like them a lot. Yeah, they
but
have
that's an
somewhere.
example.
Right.
That's an example.
But I just want to add to that the only time you need a sub-publisher, I have sub-publishers, so my catalog is very, very big and it's a mess, and I'm trying to find money in foreign countries that hopefully they can help. But if you have one song, 10 songs, it's not necessary. But if you have a song that's released on a local artist, you have to have a sub-publisher to receive the mechanical money. You can receive the PRO performance money through your PRO. So all the PROs have reciprocal agreements. So if I have a song released on, say, a major artist on Universal in Germany, that artist is not big here, never released here, but yet in Germany, this person is a huge star and is on a major label and sells millions of records, right? If that's the case, if I don't have a sub-publisher in Germany to take care of that song, I will only receive the performance money, the radio money, the streaming money, but I will never receive any of the mechanicals of the record sales, downloads, nothing, because there is no way and no reciprocal agreement with someone like Harry Fox to send that money because it's not a domestic use. Well, if I have a song that's recorded here, right, and Harry Fox is taking care of it, then they can collect those royalties from Germany, that's fine because the song is released here and distributed to Germany. But if the song is local only to Germany, then I have to have a sub-publisher. All right, so I hope that makes sense. So, you know, one can decide maybe they don't want one and they'll just take the performance money because mechanicals are so small these days. One can decide that because if you have the sub-publisher, they're gonna take a piece of your performance money too. So maybe you decide that it's more advantageous just to get your performance money without that extra piece taken out. But for the most part, you really don't want to do that. You want, and you can single song the deal. You don't have to do your whole catalog. You can just get BMG or Universal or some big sub publisher to just add in that one song that's released in that local territory. And it works out really, really well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can't put another word to that. You explained that perfectly, but it's important. It's important to have if you're doing anything internationally with another artist who's internationally. You've got to have a sub-publishing deal. All right, so okay, a couple of other questions here that I'm going to get to. Okay, we're going to get to 4 or 5 more questions, then wind it up. Okay. When you mention cue sheets, so they come from the sync placement, and what do they entail? Okay, the music supervisor has to put together the cue sheets when a production is finalized, so that people get paid royalties. And what they do is they literally put together every single music cue, like 5 seconds background, 30 seconds background, 30 seconds montage, etc., etc., etc. Every single cue, along with the information of the writer and the publisher and their PRO, their performing rights organization, so that that person will be paid properly in terms from the studio or network that is playing that particular production. And that's something that is not your responsibility, but it's something that you should ask for. You should always ask for a cue sheet from a production. They might not always give it to you, but you should always ask for it so you know exactly what they put in there and that they got it correct so that you get paid. All right, so that's all I have to say on
that. And I'll just add to that because sometimes the music supervisors don't make the cue sheets. Sometimes the composers make the cue sheets, and sometimes someone at the production company makes the cue sheet. Like if you have something with Disney or Lionsgate or some big monstrosity like that, there's a separate cue sheet coordinator, right? Exactly. So the music supervisor is free of that. So it depends, but definitely like you were saying, Mark, the entity that creates the production, someone from that entity makes the cue sheet. Yes, and if they don't, you have to beg.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's see here. Madeline asks, is Harry Fox still relevant now that there's MLC? Yeah, I mean, I would say it's still relevant. There's a lot of other mechanicals than just streaming in the US.
Exactly. So the MLC only pays for streaming mechanicals, and streaming digital mechanicals are on-demand things. So like Spotify on demand, Amazon on demand, Apple on demand. If you can demand, in other words, make your own playlist and pick and choose what songs are going to be on it, then that is what the MLC pays for. But the MLC, Harry Fox pays for physical mechanicals, record sales. So the MLC does not cover that, and the MLC only covers the US, like Mark just said. So if your song is streaming in Germany, you're not getting that money from the MLC. So the Harry Fox is essential still to the equation, as is Music Reports, MRI, which also pays for different entities of mechanicals. So they are all still very much relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next question David Tosh has. Can you use a distribution company like Cdbaby or Distrokid and list your publishing company?
And list the publishing company?
Yeah, instead of like, when you sign up for Cdbaby, I think you can on Distrokid. I don't want to commit myself 100%, but I think you can. On Cdbaby, I honestly don't know. I've gone through the process am with artists to help them out in the past with Cdbaby, and I think you can opt out of it. Yeah, you just answered
Yeah,
it.
you can opt out and or not opt in. I think it's
Yeah.
actually an opt-in thing for all of them, TuneCore, Cdbaby, Distrokid, and you want to
Exactly.
not opt in. You just use your own publishing company. Exactly. You don't want them
Yep.
them to handle the admin. So they offer to do admin for you. And as we were discussing right in the beginning, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay,
Mhm.
so we've got some Q&A from the Q&A area, and then I'll try to answer a couple of Facebook questions.
Cool.
Okay, Lily asks, there are many sync libraries. Well, libraries versus agents is a different thing. Some of them are not even serious. Which are the top 5 that are indie self-publisher friendly and non-exclusive in terms of libraries specifically, in terms of production music libraries? You know, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll have to think about that a little bit. I'm not just going to come out with like 5 right off the top of my head, because I want to be very careful about who I promote and who I don't promote.
Yeah, the only there are so many of them, and
Yeah.
I would suggest subscribing to music reports, right? Or looking in the music registry, the film and TV guide, because they list a gazillion libraries and which ones are
Yeah, do
exclusive
that.
and which ones are non-exclusive. It's really more based on your needs and what types of music you have, what is the best, because some only do instrumentals and some only do songs from the 80s and 90s and some only do pop music and some do, you know, only vocal music. And so you really have to do your research to see what suits you the best. But there are loads of them that are reputable and wonderful and have websites where you can read about them.
I'm going to give you one because I've worked with them. In full disclosure, I've helped them out a couple times, and I think they're pretty cool. They're called DL Music. I'm sure you've heard of them, Michelle. They're totally legit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Crucial is another one that I love.
Crucial's another one. They're great.
They're great. If you're doing instrumentals, there's one that I've even licensed from called Tune Fruit, when I've worked on some projects where I had to license something and they had some good stuff. And the musicsupervisor.com with Barry, of course, we love.
Musicsupervisor.com is good too.
Is a nice one. Yeah, they don't take anything, but the metadata is endless, so it could take you an hour to just load one song. But if you have time, go for it.
No, I would say those are some solid ones.
Yeah, those are some nice ones. So we found some.
So after saying we weren't going to, we put them down. Marmoset, Marmoset's fine too. I mean, I have absolutely nothing but love for Marmoset. We have, they're good people. Yep. Okay, so Mike Truth says, is the setup the same for SOCAM members? To go on BMI.com and choose 5 names. I mean, if you're a member of SOCAM and you want to sign up on BMI, yeah, okay. So there we go. Next question. Okay. Does a song, Jenny Haley, hi Jenny, does a song signed with a publisher revert to the writer? Oh yeah, we already talked about this, so we'll go past it, sorry. Nicholas Vallejo asks, when signing up as a publishing company on BMI, it asks if the LLC has a DBA or division with another PRO. I want to register the company on both Ascap and BMI. You can't do that. That's the end of that question. You can't do that. You got to pick a lane. Yeah.
And the lane that you pick has to be where you're a writer. Unless you're foreign. If you're a SOCAN writer, it's different. But if you are an ASCAP writer, you can only have an ASCAP publishing company. If you're a BMI writer, you can only have a BMI company unless you're publishing another writer. If you're publishing another writer, then you have a company at the PRO they are a writer at. But for you yourself as a writer, you can only make a publishing company at the PRO you're a member of.
Okay, next question, Ban Banerjee. Okay, speaking of sub-publishing, do I need to indicate that with my PRO?
Oh, you broke up, Mark. I didn't hear that. What did you say?
My phone just went a little nutty here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry about that. We're going to go back to the question in a second. Ugh. It's what happens when you have like two devices on your headphones. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay, so back to Ban's question. Do I need to indicate that my with a sub-publisher that my PRO Ascap is while registering the song? Meaning, do I need to know the performer's PRO publisher in a foreign country, right?
Okay, so I can answer that. No, first
Yeah.
of all, performers don't
Yeah.
have PROs. Only writers and publishers work with performing rights organizations. So an artist, a performer is not a member of a PRO. They can be if they are also a writer, but like for Beyonce, she's signed to her PRO as a writer and a publisher. She's not signed as an artist. That has no bearing on the PRO. So no, you do not have to do that. And also if you have a publisher, if you have a sub-publisher, they know your domestic PRO because you're doing a deal with them. But you don't have to do anything else with that entity. They already know
that. So let's see. Next question here. I'm going to Facebook now. Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, I just saw something in the. Okay. Okay, Pam Schwetz was asking this. I want to clear this up. Why does BMI have that 200% thing if you don't have publishing and the publishing option too? So if I have the 200% on BMI, why do I still need publishing separate from that?
we already discussed that starting in the whole webinar and starting at the top. You need a publishing company because it's not professional to run all 200% for your writer share.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And watch the replay if that wasn't clear because we discussed that a lot.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you got that. Okay, and then okay, Maurice Smith asked, can a publishing house create my patent or copyright? Well, your copyright belongs to you if you're in an English-speaking country, according to civil law, by right. You know, basically it means like you can send it in to be copywritten. You can give it to a lawyer to go through the copyright process. You can go to cosign.com, which I'll put here, which helps with that. They'll help you as well.
But you can just go on the copyright PA
form
and do it online.
Yeah,
Why would you want to pay cosign or anybody a piece to do a copyright form? It's one page.
Only
it's the easiest, simplest thing. Yeah, I guess, but it's beyond easy and simple. And like Mark was saying, the copyright goes to it's called the author on the copyright form. It's not called the writer or the composer. It's called the author, and the copyright belongs to the author. So even if you sign a publishing deal, the copyright still belongs to the author. The copyright does not belong to the publisher. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, question from Virginia. Hey, Virginia, do sync agents prefer you not to be in libraries? You know, I would not want to represent anything that's in a library as a sync agent. You know, I'd say that you should probably have some of your music that's different from what you would give a sync agent in a library. That would be my take, but I'm speaking strictly from the point of view of a sync agent. So from the point of view of a songwriter, what do you think about this, Michele?
I've never had a problem with it, and I have many sync agents and they know I have songs in libraries, and I'm honest. I think the key is honesty. I tell them if they have a problem with it, I respect that, and then okay, we can't work. But most of them have not for me, and I'm very upfront because that honesty is the best policy, right? But so I haven't had a problem with it, and I have lots of songs in libraries and lots of songs with sync agents, and But Michael Gardner has an important thing here. Did you see that?
I have not seen it yet. Let's take a look. Yes, meaning the publisher would then appropriately register their copyright as the author.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and this is what happens there, Michael. Although I'm sure you know, like I had a publishing deal that was a work for hire. When you do work for hire, the the publishing company then, yes, is the author on the copyright. And it's the only time that happens is when your music is a work for hire. Exactly. So that is a great point to make. Other than that, the writer is always the author. But for sure, if you do work for hire, the company will, like, I had a deal with this company called NEM Entertainment. It was exclusive publishing deal. And even though it was a co-publishing deal, it still was a work for hire. And when at the Copyright Office, it lists NEM Entertainment as the author. So you are absolutely correct. And that is a strange thing in the copyright law.
And Alexis, I saw your question. We already answered this. Can your songwriting be with one PRO and your publishing company with another? We already answered that question.
It can be if you have a new, like for instance, I used to be at BMI and I still have some songs there. And I used to be at Ascap and I still have some songs there. So those songs are in the BMI publishing, my publishing company, and my Ascap publishing company from past, but you cannot be current. So currently I am a CSAC writer, and therefore currently every song that I create has to go through my CSAC publishing company. I cannot just put it in my BMI company. No, so that's how it works. So if you switch PROs, you can leave songs at that old PRO and leave that old publishing company.
Okay, so the last question I'm going to take here, from what I can see, is from Catherine, and it's a good way to round it up. If you are signed up as a publisher, how do you recoup royalties from streaming in Microsync like Instagram and YouTube? There is a way to do that. Michele.
Yeah, well, it's just the same way. If you're doing YouTube, and first of all, YouTube does the deal with the publisher, usually not with the writer. So it's sort of like mechanicals, where the money is coming to the publisher, not to the writer, which is another important reason to have a publishing company. So and Microsync's the same deal. You know, it depends how your deal is set up on those Microsyncs, right? If you're, a lot of times when you do a Microsync, they're just paying you one payment. And that goes to both your writers, publishers, it's just going to you. So however you divvy it up is your own way. But if you're signed with a publishing company and they're collecting that money back, they're divvying it up and they're gonna half and half it. So you don't have to worry about that. Everything gets recouped, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
if you need it to be recouped, I personally do deals without advances because I don't want to be unrecouped. So even though I'm offered advances a lot for things, I don't accept them these days because I'd rather not be unrecouped and in debt to somebody. I just want to get my money when the royalty statement comes.
And this is a question from Carol Lester. Carol, we've discussed this before, these kinds of things. We do not register ourselves as the publisher for Reimagined covers, correct? Yeah, I mean, unless you actually are the publisher of that cover, you don't do that. You know, if you have a new arrangement, you can register that arrangement, but I don't want to get into that because that's kind of a detailed conversation. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, unless you are the publisher, you really shouldn't put yourself down as the publisher. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, so with that said, you know, if you want to get lots and lots and lots more answers and stuff on how to be, you know, as the best that you can be in this world of sync and composition, Michele and I teach class on metadata, but it ends up being a bit freewheeling. We get into, we answer everybody's questions no matter what
just
they
like
are.
Today.
We really get, like today. Yeah. If you're interested in it, this is the link to it. I promise you, you know, you'll get a lot out of it if you want to be a part of that. And we would love to have you. We're going to be starting in about a month, a little more than a month. And really, you know, we put our passion into this. And we really want you to succeed, and we don't want you to get, excuse my no, I'll be G-rated. You to get messed up or taken advantage of. See, I could do that. We don't want you to. I didn't have to swear. We don't want to see that, you know, something bad happen to you because you didn't have the knowledge you need. You know, there was this big thread that I woke up to this morning, other than that sync I talked about before. I woke up to a big thread where people were going back and forth about, whether or not a sync agent should take a back end, under what circumstances, etc. And it just triggered something in me, because I've had so many artists send me these contracts, and this one happened to be okay, actually. It happened to be fine. But with a lot of contracts I would get, artists who I really care about, who are personal friends of mine, or even if they're not personal friends of mine, but let's just say the ones that are personal friends of mine, they'll go, Mark, I have a little bit of a question about this contract that was sent to me. And it was basically saying like, okay, so we're going to take half of your upfront fee. Then we're going to take half of your publishing. Then we're going to own a part of your publishing for the time that you're signed to us and 5 years thereafter. And, and it's like, I'm like, who are you people? I want to come after you with a baseball bat. You're disgusting. It's just like, why are you doing this to an artist? You don't need to do this in order to be successful. You should be raising all boats, and anyway, it's like, it's just wrong. It's bad karma and all the rest of that stuff that I believe in, but also it's just bad business. At the end of the day, the most successful businesses tend to make good products, and they tend to make good relationships, and they tend to build things for the long term. And that's the kind of sync agent, and there's tons of them out there, and there's tons of libraries that are like that too. And there are even, God help us, there are even some good publishers out there, that you can work with, who really have passion for artists and for helping them rather than exploiting them. So, at the end of the day, this is something, that I really want to make sure that in everything that we're doing, including our class, we foster in you. We help you to develop your knowledge. We help you to be, an informed person, and as well as working on great original creative stuff. We want you to be informed so that you can make decisions based on intelligence and not based on, oh gosh, somebody sent me a deal, I'm so excited. And I totally get that feeling, but you've got to back that up with verification of exactly what they're trying to do. Are they trying to work with you as a partner, or are they trying to exploit you? So on that note, always be in charge of your process. Always know what you own. Become your own publisher, and also sign your own checks. That's the other thing. Make sure that you sign your own checks. Don't
like Oprah, man. Oprah's my hero. She signs all her own checks. She looks at them before she signs them. She knows where every penny. Yes, she knows where all her money goes. And you can say, "Wow, that's a lot of checks." Yep, but she sees and signs everyone, and that is so important, Mark. That's such great advice. Yeah, we have to be in control. Yeah, my final words are: form a publishing company.
Form a publishing company. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. I'll probably go back to the regular format next time. I was experimenting, so I apologize if you couldn't see everybody on the screen. This webinar format does keep it focused, though, doesn't it? That is the other side of it. It keeps it very focused.
Yeah, it does. It does keep it focused. Yeah, I guess that's why people do it. But
exactly. Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about a really cool AI company out of Denmark that's doing some really great things. So we're going to shift gears quite a bit. And let's see. And then next week, you know what we're going to speak about next Friday? I made a decision on this. We are going to speak about deals. We're going to get into deals because there's so many questions when it comes to deals. I want to just clear the air. And on Thursday, we're going to have our cover challenge, I think, for public domain. So we were originally going to have that Wednesday. I'm moving it one day to Thursday. Okay. We'll see everybody. Have a great, great weekend. Thank you, my friend. Mwah. Love you, Michelle. I'll talk to you later.
Love you, Mark.
Bye.